It says turbine model, not nameplate.
Not shipping.
Not shipping, nothing. They admitted they were 2.7 at the PUC. They might dial them back, they might not. How many of us know it's very easy to just change that software over the phone? I do it all the time on my sewing machines and rev that horsepower up or get the next upgrade. Those turbines have the capability to be into 2.7. They have the gearboxes. Miles just deceived. Nameplate and distortion of words. He used that last one. It is the model. We're not worried about nameplate.
Any more questions?
Yeah, was this brought up to the PUC?
We're working through this right now. It's a huge mess. It's a huge mess.
So PUC, did they rule on this?
No, we're in the middle of this. They were stunned when they were told that there were 2.7 capable turbines out there.
But they never stopped the project or did nothing?
We have to go through the process. And we just learned this. What, December 30th?
Curtailing them and
Oh.
keeping an eye on 16 or 13.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
They're curtailing them for the noise, for their waiver.
But that's the LMTs. I agree. They have not, PUC has not dealt with this yet because it's so new. It's so new.
Any more questions from the board? If not, just as before, we're going to look for a motion and a second.
The motion, the appropriate motion, Mr. Chair, would be to, this is number 2, the motion to approve the appellant's request to have the zoning officer stop construction on turbines which have a change in turbine size. A vote yes would be in favor of the appellant. A vote no would be consistent with the zoning officer's denial of the complaint. We need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Motion's been made and second. We'll know.
Discussion. Discussion on the motion.
Discussion. Motion, please.
So since I'm a little confused on the date, and I don't know that we can move on this if it's in PUC.
The question, Mr. Chair, the question is whether or not you are in agreement with the zoning officer's report
Yeah, okay.
response
Yeah.
to their appellant. There would have to be a subsequent motion table until the PUC decides if you think that's appropriate. But the request was not based upon PUC action at this point in time in their appeal. If in the event, subsequent to this action, if you were to side with the zoning officer, and there's a subsequent action at the PUC that's in favor of what the appellant is bringing up, the appellant then can come back and request to have another hearing, of which then the zoning officer will either have to go along with the, either say, I have an agreement with you, I will stop order on the building permit, or I will deny the appeal and it comes back to this board again. Procedurally, that's how I see it. So, but what's before you today is an appeal of the decision of the zoning officer, which is contained in the zoning officer's report.
And does it relate to the PUC?
Because as the appellant has stated, there has been no decision from the PUC in this matter.
Right, but this doesn't relate to its
No.
independent.
Discussion?
So basically, we're voting whether we agree with what was by our officer, what her decision was.
Number 2, the staff report is the basis for the denial of the complaint.
All right.
The applicant, the appellant is here appealing that decision.
Yep.
You have, based on what the appellant has stated, you have to weigh that against your staff report, decide whether or not the appellant right or the zoning officer. Yes vote could be in agreement with the appellant, a no vote could be in agreement with the zoning officer.
Any more discussion? Comment? Let's have a roll. Roll call.
Hunt,
No.
McCullough,
No.
Weber,
Yes.
Sparks,
Yes.
Pulaski,
Yes.
Letty,
No.
Adler,
No.
4 to 3.
3 votes in favor, 4 votes against, the motion fails.
How did you state that? I didn't
3
read.
votes in favor of the motion, 4 against, the motion fails. We are now on to complaint number 5. Is that correct, Ms. Moyer?
Yes.
Complaint number 5 is that Jay Haley provides information concerning noise and shadow filter distribution application and is not a licensed engineer in South Dakota. It's here to excuse me. Anytime, whenever you're ready to start. Again, 15 minutes.
Okay, so Jay Haley came here, their sound engineer, and he made this report, and he signed it PE. He said he was an engineer, licensed, registered engineer. And he was not. He presented at the PUC hearing, he was a licensed engineer, and he was not. And that is a fact, and he even admitted that in testimony. He says, back in 2016, I elected to let my registration lapse and not renew it because the continuing education requirements had been ramped up a little bit and I'm getting close to retiring. And I just decided I hadn't stamped a drawing in 20 years. It's not necessary for the design work that I do with wind farms, so I elected to let it expire. But he represented to this board that he was licensed. He may have all the experience in the world. I just read something from him, an affidavit that said he's evaluated 60 projects. Well, I've done 30, and I've done more than that in CAFOs. So does that make me a licensed registered engineer? No. And that licensing gave weight. You relied on the information given, and it was illegal for what he did. And I included that documentation about it being illegal in the state of North Dakota and South Dakota. I want to go further though with his report, because in the application, which you guys relied on, they said they were going to follow the proposed ordinances. Those proposed ordinances required Mr. Haley to measure the noise from 25 feet from the house. Pass these around also. He didn't do that in that report. So he didn't do what he said he was going to do or had to do by the requirements of the ordinance. And it says right here that in their application, I have a copy of that. Another thing that happened to come up was this. This is all after the fact. This is just in the last few months. But in his report and presenting to you, he uses the analysis of ISO 9613-2, the attenuation of sound and propagation outdoors. That all sounds great and scientific and all those things, but what we discovered was ISO 9613-2 only works for 30 meters. And there's this picture here what ISO talks about, right here. I'm going to send this around. But it's on the ground to 30 meters. These turbines are 147 meters. That's 110 meters off. His calculations can't even be right. But you relied on that because he said he was an engineer. He's using all this science. We all believe things like that. Go ahead and pass that around. You can look at those two pictures. That's the quickest way to get to and there's testimony in there talking about, from an expert, talking about how the sound source cannot be, because it's elevated, so the sound source is elevated and it doesn't work with his science. So his sound and flicker reports that he presented to you aren't working. Also with Jay Haley's thing, we're going to go back to that 2.7. How many times in his report did he say there were 2.3 models? Over and over and over, 2.3 models. Just trying to look to see when date he submitted his September 2018. So they probably knew they were getting 2.7s. But it's in his documentation, it's 2.3s. I can't tell you how many are 2.7s. I noticed some. We don't have that definitive. The ones I saw, yeah, those pictures I gave you were Grant County. Jay Haley misrepresented. And again, is this board just going to continually allowing misrepresentation to happen? How will you know when the next one comes in if they're telling the truth, if you let this skate? I do feel this application was approved on falsehoods.
You go over that measurement thing again for,
Okay, so the ISO 9613 only works for 30 meters. And I have it written all over my notes here, but I don't know where it went. And these turbines are 147 meters tall. That only works up to 30 meters. Okay, so that's 110, 11 years off, approximately. Is that right? Yep.
Mr. Chair, can I ask you a question? Because I've been getting lost in the
Okay.
The 110 and 147 and the 30, is that the vertical distance? of that?
Yes. Yep. Did you see the picture there?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So this scientific equation that he's using, the standard, actually, it's a standard that he's using, has an equation that says how to figure out this noise and ground attenuation. He used a 0.5 in there. You can't use a 0.5 because the standard says it only works for 30 meters. The noise source is at 147 feet high. It's a direct hit on top of that house. And that's what that science says, and that's what those testimonies in there from other experts say. And so he applied the standard wrong. And he presented that to you and gave sound studies to you on that. I think this board should say it's not okay to come in here and say you're somebody you're not, you have these credentials and you're not. Present information that's not right.
Where do you get all your information?
So it's clear as a process when we respond and opportunity to questions.
Schumacher for Crown Ridge. We just got out hearings with the PUC where PU staff and the expert retained by the PUC said that the attenuation factor of 0.5 that was used in this modeling is the correct standard. What she presented to you are from other dockets. This has not been accepted by the South Dakota PUC, the PUC staff, and their retained independent sound expert have all disagreed with what she just presented to you. The important thing is that none of what she said makes a bit of difference here. There is no requirement that you be an engineer to do sound modeling. There is no requirement in the ordinances that there be sound modeling at all. It's just a tool to help demonstrate that this project is going to comply. At the PUC level, it is a requirement. And at the PUC level, these same arguments about Mr. Haley's credentials were made. PUC accepted his testimony, accepted his modeling, and approved the project. There is nothing in the fact that this guy decided he didn't want to attend any more continuing education meetings and pay his licensing fee after a whole career as a licensed engineer that makes his expertise in sound modeling invalid. He truly is a leading authority in the world. He goes across the world and teaches other people how to do sound modeling. He does this for projects all across the world, and he is a leading authority in this area for which no engineer credentials are required. So the fact that he continued to leave his PA designation that he had earned and used for his whole career for a period of time after he let it lapse is an oversight on his part. He should not have left that on there. But it does not mean that what he presented is inaccurate. And more importantly, there is nothing here today that indicates that there is any violation of the county ordinances with regard to the level of sound or shadow flicker emitted from this project. Without that, again, all we have is an illegal backdoor attempt at an appeal. Their opportunity to appeal is already passed. This is not the time or place for appealing the permitting process before this body. There's simply no basis here for any action on the part of this body based on anything that's presented here. Again, it's the PUC level where sound modeling is required. Mr. Haley's models were accepted even after the arguments you heard today were made. With regard to Mr. Haley's credentials. The PUC didn't think he had to be an engineer. The PUC didn't think his modeling was invalid just because he had let his engineer designation lapse. And again, there's nothing that even alleges any violation of your county ordinances or the permit here.
I don't get a rebuttal?
We have a question.
Okay. Thank you. At the PUC, Mr. Hanson, Commissioner Hanson, voted in dissent. And they did find the attenuation at 0.5 was not appropriate. And Mr. Hanson called out this report that I just gave you. That was the reason. And he talked about deception. Now, this is this board here. Mr. Haley did not have to put down that he was a registered engineer. He did. It wasn't required, but it added weight to his report. Because you don't give my report the same weight that you would give his. That meant something. And this is this board. And this information was used in order to approve the conditional use permit. Whether it was required or not, it was presented to show we got this. When they really did not have this. And tonight I've presented several times that they have dropped the ball. The PUC also knew this, and you guys did not, when they made their determination. But Mr. Schumacher did not tell you the part that they didn't get their 0.5 attenuation, they got 0.3, and that's also still on the table, quite frankly. It is. There's complaints that are filed, and we're working through another process because of this information. What he did was illegal. I gave you that information in the original complaint. In both South Dakota and North Dakota, you cannot affix a registered engineering title to your name if you are not a professional registered engineer. It's illegal. And this board shouldn't allow it. I am not asking for a backdoor appeal. We did appeal it. We're going through that process. This is fraud, and this is after. We discovered this way later.
Questions from the board?
So is there anybody going to be checking flicker sound at any of these sites? And then can each individual request, or how are they, and who pays?
The applicant Crown Bridge has agreed with the PUC to hire independent sound engineers to do continuous sound checks on this project. So
In other words, they
that
really
will be done.
disagreed with what you've done, but they were giving you, okay, all right.
Yeah, this relates to an entirely different issue having to do with a blade attachment. And that is not a requirement of this permit. It was a requirement of the PUC permit. And it is related to that issue that the continuous sound monitoring is going to be done. So there will be independent sound studies done that will verify that this project will be within the thresholds.
And that'd be at the
set by
0.5
ordinance.
factor or the 0.3 or?
Well, see, the 0.3 factor was utilized with regard to not putting these blade attachments on. It had nothing to do with Mr. Haley's sound studies. It has to do with meeting sound thresholds with the original blades as opposed to the blade attachments, which are going to be put on this spring. And as they run these turbines until those are put on, one of the commissioners proposed an amendment to a waiver that said, I think 0.3 is right in the winter when the snow is packed and the ground is hard, for us to monitor sound until you put the low noise trailing edge attachments on the blades.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was 0.3, not 0.25.
I'm sorry?
0.3 is what they...
Yeah, and again, that just relates to the modeling being done until these attachments are put. The PUC staff and their sound engineer, their independent sound experts said that 0.5 is the correct attenuation factor.
So when will the sound monitoring begin?
We're still working out the details on the timing on that, but we're required to do the sound testing both before and after the low noise trailing edge attachments are put on. So we have a deadline of late summer or early fall to put those attachments on. The plan is to get them on earlier if possible. We have to do sound testing both before and after those attachments are fixed.
And we get that information in, would we see that? Would it be per tower?
I assume it'll be
Yeah.
part of the PUC.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
And I assume you'll hear about it.
yeah.
So you're basically saying you're going to do this at your discretion then?
No, it's...
These tests, or who's going to, you're going to have an independent company come in and do the testing?
And then that's going to be upon request of...
No, it's already, we've already agreed to do that. We're working out the protocols with PUC now on how that's going to take place.
So this is another thing that's basically back with the PUC then. So you're waiting on them.
The sound testing, I mean, we've agreed, and indicated to PUC, we agree on the right of the PUC that we will. It's just the specific methodologies now are being worked out with PUC staff.
So the PUC ruling was 2 to 1.